All right, now I realize that I'm probably going to sound like an old man with what I'm about to say, but I really miss the old Hollywood. I can remember when I was younger, like the Academy Awards, the Oscars was a really big deal for me and my friends and family, and I don't know, after the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I just find myself not really caring anymore. But I'm still kind of nostalgic for the old days of Hollywood. And right now, we are in Hollywood on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and today we are going to be visiting the graves of some of the most famous people that this town created. All right, now like I said, we are in Hollywood, California, right here along the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We're going to be going and visiting some famous graves today. But first, I wanted to point out a few of these stars that I've been seeing as I've been walking along this sidewalk. Now, at the tail end of our Route 66 series, we wrapped up here in California on the West Coast and actually looked at a few of the stars here along the Hollywood Walk, so you can go back and check that episode out. But there's so many of them here that, of course, we couldn't get to them all. And here's one that I don't think that we showed, the star of the Three Stooges. So the Three Stooges was a childhood favorite of mine. I can remember like my dad and my brother and I watching these things all the time. Of course, the best Three Stooges is you know, the era of Moe, Larry, and Curly, and then after Curly was out, Shemp replaced him, and it wasn't as good, and then they got to Curly Joe, and yeah, I wasn't into that. But anyway, the early days, in my opinion, were the best ones. But anyway, here's the star for the Three Stooges. Well, if you've ever watched Star Wars or Bridge on the River Kwai, you'll recognize this name. Here's the star of Alec Guinness, who of course played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the early Star Wars movies when Star Wars was actually pretty good. Again, I'm going to sound like an old man ranting in this video probably. Here's something else that's interesting about Alec Guinness is he was a World War II veteran. He commanded an LCI in the Allied invasion of Sicily for the Royal Navy. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, now I'm pretty sure that I showed this one last time, but I'm going to show it again just because he is one of my favorites. Here is the star for the legendary John Wayne. Now, if you talk to Scott and Jen from the channel Walk with History, they will try and tell you that John Wayne's greatest movie was The Searchers. But unfortunately, they are wrong. John Wayne's greatest movie, in my opinion, was True Grit. Yeah, here's his star. All right, as I was walking along here, I just happened to stumble on this star right here. This is the Hollywood star of TV actor Jamie Farr. So this is another one that brings up a lot of memories from my childhood. Jamie Farr starred in the TV series MASH, which I think I've seen every episode because my mom and dad really loved the show, and I did too. But Jamie Farr played Corporal Klinger. So MASH was set during the Korean War, and Klinger's shtick was that he was dressing up as a woman to try and prove to the army that he was crazy so that he could get a discharge. Yeah, pretty cool that we found this one. Holy smokes, here's another cool one that I just stumbled on. Here is the star of Audie Murphy, who probably needs no introduction to the people who watch this channel, but of course Audie Murphy is a World War II veteran. He was in the 3rd Infantry Division, was the most highly decorated soldier of World War II, recipient of the Medal of Honor, and then after the war took up a career in acting. Starred as himself in the movie To Hell and Back, and was in several westerns, also played in the Red Badge of Courage, and unfortunately died in a plane accident in May of 1971. Holy smokes, they even have a star for Rin Tin Tin here. All right, got a couple heavy hitters here. Here is the star for George Burns. He's another one that I can remember from when I was really, really young. And then over here, close to George Burns, is the legendary music artist Frank Sinatra. And this is kind of interesting. So I was hanging out with my old buddy Jack Moran yesterday. So Jack is a World War II veteran. He's been featured on several episodes of History Traveler. We've gone over to Europe with him, and he's talked about his time with the 87th Infantry Division. But anyway, he was a big Sinatra fan, and I was over at his house, and there was this 15-year-old boy who was there and was just enamored with Jack's collection of Sinatra records and his stories about seeing Sinatra back in the day. So anyway, I know a lot of people kind of rip on Gen Z. I actually love this generation. They're a cool bunch, and they're really into some of the good stuff like Sinatra. Hey, here's the star of Mae West. I think she's the one who invented the inflatable life vest for the U.S. military in World War II. But I could be wrong. Right now, I realize that I could probably go on all day showing these stars like that of Charlton Heston right here, or Stacy Keach, who was in the Civil War series, The Blue and the Gray, back in the 80s, but we don't have time for that. So we are going to hop back in the car and head on over to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery to visit a few of the graves of some of the old Hollywood royalty. All right, we've made our way just a short distance from where we just were at the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and we are now currently at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. This is the final resting place of a number of prominent Hollywood figures, especially from the early days of Hollywood. We're not going to be able to show them all, but we're going to show and talk about a few. I pulled up here and there were a whole bunch of cars right here where I'm at. Matter of fact, I'm going to take a quick little peek right here. And I thought, well, dadgum, man, there's a lot of people showing up here in the morning to take a look at these graves. And it turns out there's a yoga class that's going on right behind me, which is different to have a yoga class in a cemetery, but whatever. So there's a grave that we're going to take a look at here in just a moment, but I happened to just walk by this one as we were approaching our first grave. And this is actually not even a grave at all. This is a memorial to Johnny Ramone, who was a guitarist for the Ramones. He was born John Cummings, and of course Ramones, as I'm talking about this, you're probably having some old songs from the Ramones buzzing through your head. But anyway, he was cremated, and to the best of my understanding, his wife still has his remains, but this memorial was placed here in the cemetery in his honor. And here you can see a quote down at the bottom from a couple of individuals. One by Eddie Vedder, lead singer of Pearl Jam. He was a great American and the greatest friend. I love you, John. And then down there below, Rob Zombie with the quote, says, a dedicated punk and a loyal friend. Thanks for everything. I miss you, Johnny. So for people from my generation who grew up, kind of in the grunge era, well, the Ramones were a big influence on a lot of those guys. But here's the grave that I was actually walking over here to see, and that is the grave of the legendary Hattie McDaniel. So Hattie McDaniel is probably most well known for her performance as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. To me, I mean, Gone with the Wind is a classic. If you adjust for inflation, it's the top grossing movie of all time, I think, or at least it was at one point. When I watched that movie, Hattie McDaniel's character is the only one that I really like. She's kind of like the voice of reason in the entire movie. So she was awarded the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, making her the first African American to win an Academy Award. And here's something that is crazy. At the Atlanta premiere in 1939, because of Jim Crow laws, she was not allowed to attend the premiere in Atlanta. And then at the Academy Awards, she, accepts the Oscar, but then her and her escort were required to sit at a segregated table. The hotel where the event was being held had a no blacks policy, but they allowed McDaniel in as a favor. And then she, continued to, face all kinds of discrimination, from other organizations. And at the same time, took a bunch of criticism from the African American community for her portrayal as Mammy. But anyway, I think it's a brilliant performance. And yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to come here and visit her final resting place. Hey, speaking of the Ramones, here is the grave of Dee Dee Ramone, who was the bass player for the punk band, the Ramones. If you see down here, I kind of like this. It says, "Okay, I gotta go now," and you can see where people have been by and have left guitar picks and things like that. There's also kind of an interesting practice here where, as you can see, like people have been kissing this grave. I'm seeing lipstick marks all over the place. We're visiting the grave, but we're not gonna kiss it. I'm gonna just leave that to other people. And then up here at the top it says, "I feel so safe flying on a ray on the highest trails above." Yeah, there's the grave of Dee Dee Ramone. Well, this is kind of interesting. I guess we have some peacocks that are just roaming about here in the cemetery. I don't know what that's all about. I honestly wonder if that has any connection with the peacock logo for NBC. One of the individuals that I wanted to visit today is an original member of Hollywood royalty, and to visit his final resting place, we're going to have to go inside the Hollywood Memorial Park Cathedral Mausoleum. All right, making our way in through this mausoleum here. And these mausoleums are always of interest to me personally because they're not really a thing where I live. So yeah, it's just always kind of interesting. And there is an individual who is laid to rest here who is a part of the original Hollywood royalty. Yeah, and here he is right here. Rudolph Valentino. So Rudolph Valentino was an Italian. His full name, hang on a second. Let's see if I can do this. His full name was Rudolfo Alfonso Raffaello Pier Filibert Guglielmi di Valentina di Antangula. Okay, Rudolph Valentino is a lot easier though. So anyway, Rudolph Valentino was a silent film actor. And I'll tell you what, you look at these old silent films and they're of course dated to us now, but man, think about how difficult it would be to have to communicate to an audience using no words, only physicality and expressions. So anyway, Valentino, he kind of had some dark, mysterious looks. So sometimes he was cast as a villain in the movies. And anyway, rose to worldwide fame, but unfortunately died at the age of 31 in 1926. He had a ruptured appendix that he had some difficulties from. There were no modern day antibiotics available to him at that point, and his health ended up deteriorating over the course of a week, and then he passed away. And it said that there were over 100,000 people that filed past his casket when he died. Yeah, here's the grave of one of the originals, or resting place rather, of one of the originals, Rudolph Valentino. We've moved over to another mausoleum, and in here we have a very prominent place that is the final resting place of one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, that of Judy Garland. So of course, Judy Garland is probably most well known for her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She was also in Meet Me in St. Louis and a number of other films. During the Second World War, she actually got the title of honorary corporal from the U.S. Army for her role in going over and entertaining the troops. Judy Garland had some personal problems, and unfortunately those personal problems caught up with her June 22nd of 1969 when she overdosed on barbiturates. But anyway, down there at the bottom it says, "I'll come to you smiling through the years." So here's the final resting place of Dorothy, Judy Garland. So what would you say is the most famous dog in Hollywood history? Some people might say Lassie. Maybe there are a few votes for Rin Tin Tin. I'm going to say that it's probably Toto from the movie The Wizard of Oz. So here in the cemetery they have a monument to Toto from the 1939 film The Wizard of Oz. Down here it says, "After the death of Toto, originally named Terry," interesting fact, "in 1945, owner and trainer Carl Spitz buried the Cairn Terrier on his ranch in Studio City. The 1958 construction of the Ventura Freeway destroyed her resting place." Two things there. First, I didn't know that Toto was a female. And second, the dang freeway destroyed this legendary dog's resting place. But anyway, at least Toto has a memorial right here in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Well, I was wanting to go inside this mausoleum to visit the resting place of another prominent figure, but as you can see, well, they got this one chained and locked up today. But inside here, inside this mausoleum, is the final resting place of noted mobster Bugsy Siegel. So Bugsy Siegel was again a crime boss and was one of the guys in the mob who really kind of invested, I guess you could say, in the financial opportunities of a little desert town called Las Vegas. And it was suspected that he was skimming some money off of the top from construction funds and some of the gambling revenue, and the other members of the mafia did not take kindly to that. And while he was in the home of his girlfriend in Beverly Hills, California, he was reading the evening newspaper, and a couple of boys came in and shot him in the head 3 times. So that was the end of Bugsy Siegel, and he was laid to rest inside of this mausoleum. So I'm a younger Gen X guy, and I'll tell you what, my poor generation just really took it on the chin when it came to our musical influences. So first we lost Kurt Cobain to a self-inflicted gunshot wound, lead singer of Nirvana. Lane Staley of Alice in Chains, lost him to a heroin overdose. Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon, heroin overdose. Let's see, Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots, heroin overdose. Chester Bennington from Linkin Park ended up hanging himself. But the grave of this next artist is the one that probably cut me the deepest. Right here by this pond, kind of obscured by a lot of these plants, is the final resting place of the lead singer of Soundgarden, Chris Cornell. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that there are a lot of artists from the grunge era that I like and had a lot of talent. I don't know that anybody had a voice like Chris Cornell. Soundgarden was one of my favorite bands. Super Unknown and Down on the Upside are just 2 incredible albums. Now, unfortunately, I never got to see Soundgarden in concert. Saw Pearl Jam several times, and Metallica and a whole bunch of others. Metallica's not a grunge band, but you know what I mean. another band that endured through the 90s. But I did get to see Chris Cornell when he was the lead singer of Audioslave, which was the kind of super group between Chris Cornell and the members of Rage Against the Machine. But anyway, in 2017, Soundgarden had got back together and were touring, and unfortunately Chris Cornell took his own life, but is one of the absolute greats of the grunge era. All right, this video is quickly turning into just a tour to see all of the beloved figures from my childhood, and here is one in particular that figures pretty prominent, right along with the Three Stooges. I also watched a lot of the Little Rascals, and this is the grave of Carl Switzer, who you might better know as Alfalfa from the Our Gang movies or the Little Rascals. And he unfortunately has a pretty tragic end. Now, you probably remember Alfalfa from the Little Rascals. He's the one who sings off key, and he's always, he kind of girl crazy and has the characteristic, spike in his hair in the back. Now, later on, he continued acting even as an adult. Was in some movies during the World War II era. Something that you may not know is he was in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. He played the young guy that opens up the floor that uncovers the pool during the dance scene of A Wonderful Life. And he was also in the movie The Ten Commandments. He played a slave in that movie. Now, off screen, he had some success as a hunting guide and as a dog breeder. So you see the dog here on his stone, and had some pretty large Hollywood stars as part of his clientele. Jimmy Stewart, Roy Rogers, all right? And unfortunately, he's gonna die in 1959 at the age of 31 from a gunshot that was inflicted by a customer over an altercation over a $50 payment for training a dog. And apparently the judge later ruled the homicide as justifiable. So yeah, it's a pretty tragic end to old Alfalfa, but here's his final resting place. We've moved back over close to the area where Dee Dee Ramone is buried, and just a short distance away is the grave of Chief Luther Standing Bear. So as you can see, Chief Luther Standing Bear was born in 1868. He was the son of Standing Bear, who was a chief of the Lakota, and at about age 11, his father sent him to a boarding school in Pennsylvania, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. And once he was there, he had to just pick a name for himself off of a wall. So he chose the name Luther, and then his father's name became his last name. He ended up going back to South Dakota, resided on the Rosebud Reservation, and was part of a school that was there. Was later part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, and got injured in a train accident, and then ended up making his way out to Hollywood, where he starred in about a dozen films, including The Santa Fe Trail, Texas Pioneers in 1932, Cyclone of the Saddle in 1935, and was again one of the early Native American actors here in Hollywood. Well, apparently this place doubles as a dang peacock ranch. I had no idea that peacocks were a thing for this cemetery. I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments for people, being surprised that I don't know that. But yeah, I'm going to have to look into this a little more and figure out what the connection is between the peacocks and the cemetery here. Also here in Hollywood Forever Cemetery is the grave of Paul Rubens, who many people probably know better as Pee Wee Herman. Okay, so Paul Rubens had a kids show called Pee Wee's Playhouse. Honestly, as a kid, I was never into it. It kind of annoyed me, to be honest with you. But not everybody. There were some people that really liked the show, and you can see that some of those people have left little mementos here, like a dinosaur and There's the chair from the show. I think the name was Cherry or something like that. Okay, you also have his bike and bow tie and, you know, different little odds and ends that people have left here because the show did mean something to them. So Paul Rubens also probably goes without saying, but was involved in a rather embarrassing incident that resulted in from a lack of self-control at one point in his life. But anyway, he died July 30th of 2023. And buried quite close to him is another prominent figure in Hollywood, Burt Reynolds. So Burt Reynolds, of course, was probably most well known for his roles in Deliverance and Smokey and the Bandit and The Longest Yard, but especially Smokey and the Bandit had his, you know, signature mustache, and he passed away on September 6th of 2018. But he is buried right here overlooking this pond, right next to Paul Rubens. Here's something that's completely unrelated to anything in Hollywood, at least I think, but I just happened to walk by this grave on the way to another one. This is the final resting place of Oral H. Lev, who was in the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne in World War II. You can see that he died on October 9th of 1944. Yeah, so anytime I'm in a cemetery, I'll sometimes stumble across stuff like this, and it gives me a little something to go and research and check out and learn a little bit more. So yeah, I'll have to check out Oral Lev's story and see what I can find on him. Little turtle coming up here to say hello while we are out here filming today. Dude just swam up here and just kind of hanging out. Now, I don't think we could come to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery and be talking Hollywood history without talking about one of the titans here in the history of Hollywood filmmaking, and that is of Cecil B. DeMille. So DeMille is over here on the left-hand side and is just a legendary director in Hollywood. I think he made around 70 films, okay, and his career spanned the silent film era and also the sound film era. A lot of religious themes in his movies. So he, in 1927, had a silent film called King of Kings about the life of Christ. He also, in his sound film era, had a film in 1949 on Samson and Delilah. He's also the director of another great one called The Greatest Show on Earth, and his final film is probably his biggest and best and most well-known, and that is The Ten Commandments. So he always had like these just larger-than-life sets. Again, it was just kind of this golden age of Hollywood mentality that we've lost maybe a little bit in some ways, been replaced by, you know, CGI and computer graphics and things like that. But anyway, yeah, here is the final resting place of Cecil B. DeMille. All right, now this next one took me a few minutes to find because he's basically buried underneath this shrub. So this is the grave of legendary Hollywood director John Huston. So John Huston, I believe his first film was The Maltese Falcon, which starred Humphrey Bogart as this private detective that was, you know, caught up in this real intricate plot, real great detective film. He also directed Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The Asphalt Jungle, African Queen. All right, so there were a lot of big films that John Huston was behind in kind of the golden age of Hollywood. You can see there he died in, well, maybe you can see it, died in 1987, and yeah, is buried right here by the lake at Hollywood Forever. All right, now since this has ended up just being a tour of the graves of all of the people who were influential to my childhood, I think it's good to wrap up with this one right here, the grave of Mel Blanc, who was known as the man of 1,000 voices. So any beloved cartoon character from your childhood that you can think of, Mel Blanc was probably the voice behind it. Most notably, Bugs Bunny. So he was the one who had the catchphrase, "What's up, Doc?" But he was also the voice behind Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Sylvester the Cat, Tweety Bird, Yosemite Sam, Foghorn Leghorn, Marvin the Martian. So think about all of those different characters and how distinct and unique all of those voices are. That all came from one man. After working for Warner Brothers for a long time, Mel Blanc went on to work for Hanna-Barbera, where he was the voice of Barney Rubble. During World War II, he was the voice of Private Snafu in the training films and the different like little funny shorts that they would show the soldiers. He even had like the beep beep from the Roadrunner, Elmer Fudd, like all of these different characters. Well, that's all Mel Blanc. And what an appropriate phrase to have etched on your tombstone as you go out, to say, "That's all, folks." All right, well, there you go. That was a little bit from right here at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood, California. Really glad that we stopped here today. This is a place where you can come and not only get a little bit of Hollywood history, but a little bit of music history, a little bit of military history, as I found out and was surprised with, a little bit of history of the mob. Yeah, very, very cool place.